Duel of Wands is a new head-to-head two-player card game from Renegade Game Studios based off the world of the role-playing game Kids on Brooms. In the card game, you take on the roles of two dueling student wizards trying to study up and take out your opponent as best you can. This is Roll for Crit, and this is our review.
There are two ways to outsmart your opponent in this duel. The first one is to drag out the duel and make it so they cannot draw up to 4 cards at the end of their turn. You always need 4 cards, otherwise you've lost. The other bigger way is to take out their psyche card. Each deck has one, and it's very important that you protect this. If it ever gets played or banished, you are out of that duel for the round. Like we said, though, you have a deck of cards, which will be all the spells you have at your disposal. You'll always have 4 at the start of your turn. You will secretly choose one to play with. They could be many different things, such as naming a card and making them banish it. This is a bit more offensive. Or even cards that could react to your opponent if they try to banish something of yours in order to protect yourself. Each deck is the same for most part. You can actually look at this card here. I'll tell you the breakup of the decks. We'll get to the unique spells a little bit later. But once you play a card, and for whatever reason, if you lose a card because someone dispelled you correctly or you played a card, you will add a card to your hand. The card you played is put off to your cast pile. Sometimes things may get banished. If they do, put them off to a banish pile. These are almost never recoverable. After you've played your card, your opponent will play a card, and you'll keep going back and forth from your hand, not from your deck. And odds are there will come a point when you have played most of the cards in your hand, or at the very least, maybe you're not feeling too comfortable. That's when you'll want to use this recover card. It's very important because what happens is you banish it, but in return, you take every card you've played, your deck, and your hand, and you shuffle it and get a new hand of cards. This gameplay will continue back and forth until someone is out of cards, whether they're played or banished, or if another player has been able to hit that psyche card. Then you'll start a new round with some new rules. If you are able to win 2 rounds, that means you have won the duel.
Now, for the most part, each player has an identical deck of cards with the exact same spells that they have the potential to draw for their hand and to play. But there are a couple of exceptions. First, there are the unique spells. There are 7 different unique spell cards, and at the start of each round, each player is going to randomly receive 2 of those unique spells to be placed into their deck. The player will get the chance to look at them beforehand, so they'll know what's in their deck, but the other player will not, except that they'll know they don't have either of the 2 that they have because each one is completely unique. So as you play, you're going to be drawing these powerful spells that will let you do things like keep your opponent from banishing any of your cards for a round or allowing you to look at the top of their deck, even get rid of cards of theirs that they are unable to block. A lot of different special powerful effects that you might have at your disposal. The other thing that may make your deck unique are the upgraded versions of existing basic spell cards. At the beginning of the game, each player will secretly choose 2 upgraded versions of their existing spell cards and swap those out for 2 regular versions from their deck. So that's another little secret the other player won't know about. And even if there are multiple copies of these, they're all different and powerful and better than those other cards in different ways. You'll also get another opportunity to upgrade your cards. If you lose the first round of the game, the losing player gets to, once again, choose 2 upgraded cards and put those into their deck to make it more powerful. And again, the other player won't know what these are until they are played. Again, players go back and forth until someone has won 2 rounds and they are the ultimate duelist.
There are a lot of Renegade games out there, including 2-player ones. And while we have not played all of them, this one has felt a little bit different. The ones I can think of in my head are a little bit slower back and forth. This feels much more aggressive. You're really trying to think what cards your opponent has or what they can do and try to maybe limit their options. Or if you're lucky enough, just take out their psyche card.
Yeah, I think the name of the game in this one is Reading Your Opponent. This is another game, we recently reviewed King of 12 from Lucky Duck Games, and they both have one thing in common, which is that every player has the same cards in hand, with some exceptions as we outlined. But for the most part, you have a pretty good idea what your opponent has available to them. You need to try to read the other player and think, what are they doing? And based on what they have already played, you're trying to deduce what might still be left in their hand. Did they draw that psyche card on round one? Like, are you going to risk trying to call them out on it? Or is it still at the bottom of their deck and you're a fool, or they have another card that's going to block it somehow? So that's a big part of it. And I think those blocking cards are also really essential because that makes it so that it's not just a game of something like Love Letter where it's just you saying, "Oh, you have this thing? Yeah, I do. I'm out of the game. It's done." That could happen. It's possible that that happens. But to me, I think there are enough cards that are, if you hold them, they're kind of your safety cards that just in case to make it not an issue to me in a negative way.
There are 4 blocker cards. There aren't too many.
But
Because
the deck is only 11 cards, so
that
I'm
is
sure
true.
it's pretty
But
good.
I will say 2 of them you probably want to play, at least you always liked for their offensive ability. I don't think we ever used the break for their defensive. The big one being, I think, is recover. The recover cards, I think, are the really big ones because because you can, even with protecting your psyche, you can lose if you spend too many cards.
Mhm.
So that's really the way you can get them back into your hand. And you have 2. So in essence, you sort of have the way I viewed it is like you had 3 life bars almost. You had your starting, and every time you use the recovery, it's sort of like getting rid of one, which became very scary because if you used it too early, you're going through your health very fast. Or if your opponent was able to force you to use it, whether they dispelled it or they hijacked your cards, which there, as far as I know, I don't think there is a defense to a hijack. But what I felt after playing is what's going to happen is even with the random cards, which I do like because that helps spice things up a little bit through the upgrades, swinging power, or just do they have that obliterate or that shield, was it, or defend?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. It really comes down to you sort of just learn the meta of who you're playing against, and that can sort of speed up in how games goes. You'll know, at least I feel like Jonathan, I'm probably going to try to hit your recover cards really fast.
Right. It's another one of those games where if you play it enough, you are going to go back and forth. And the thing that's like you said, oh, recover cards are really important. So it becomes a sensitive issue where you might often try to predict and guess, do you have the recover card? So I'm going to try to banish it if you have it, because that's what one of the cards does. So then I think that the game may evolve in a different way where then people will, maybe if they have recover, maybe they'll refresh just as fast as they can, even if it's not the ideal time to do it, because they want to get rid of it and use it before it's wasted and the opponent calls it out. And then maybe that evolves and now people are using them too fast, so you go back to the old way and this other spell, the unique spell, comes in and changes things up. So there's definitely that potential for the strategies to change as they go on. That being said, it's at its core, it's a pretty simple game. A full game will last you, I think, 15 minutes for the most part, especially once you're more familiar with the cards. So while there's some fun depth and head games, this is definitely a filler game.
Still, there is this interesting dynamic of a back and forth of really trying to find out how your opponent does choose to upgrade things, if you are using the upgrade things, or what unique spells they have, because you can't just go straight into zapping with your dispel because you don't know whether they do have that unique spell that could get a card back, or if they're going to hit you back with that stronger obliterate. Crits and misses for Duel of Wands.
Crits. This game is as much a battle of wits as it is a battle of cards, as reading your opponent will be very important to ensure your victory.
Players will be using very similar decks, so it is quite reasonable for you to be able to predict what your opponent's going to do, and very rewarding when your guesses go through.
The unique cards and spell upgrades you can acquire add just enough of an element of mystery to the game so it doesn't just feel like rock, paper, scissors.
The extra bit of variability that comes from both the unique and upgrade cards makes sure that the games aren't too predictable, while also not being just crazy chaos and wild guesses. Misses. This is a smaller game, so that means there aren't too many crazy permutations or strategies out there. Odds are, if you play this a lot with the same people, you're going to learn each other's strategies, and games may get boring and predictable.
Considering the size and scope of the game, I think that the level of depth here is actually fairly impressive, but you shouldn't go into this expecting something that has too much depth. It's a relatively simple game.
If you watch our channel, it comes as no surprise. I feel when it comes to two-player games in particular, Jonathan and me tend to shift in terms of what we like to see and what not. I feel like I said that I could probably guess how the game's gonna go in terms of what's being played, not who's gonna win or lose. You never know that. By like, I would say at least 2 games in, I know like Jonathan really loves to play those break cards, which are very annoying for me. In terms of me, I'm thinking Jonathan pretty knows that I'm probably going to try to either hit recovery or his hijack card because I want to steal cards from people. I feel like it's a good way to pretty much exhaust them very fast. And but Jonathan, you seem to think like that's not too big of a deal, or at least you didn't think that was going to be happen too fast for you.
Yeah, well, I feel like if we're the people who are, we play a lot of games, so this maybe is not us, but if you are going to sit down and like break this out more often, what you just said may be true, but then I think eventually I will start to realize, oh, he expects me to play these break cards. I'm going to switch up my strategy a little bit. I think that that's the whole thing that I'm talking about is that over time those things will shift. And to me, it's a little, I guess it's a little bit player dependent, but I think that the player, if one strategy starts to emerge, the other person will try to do something else to counter it. And I think, especially with those upgrade cards, there is room for that in this game. And I just personally, I never assume that I know anything. So that's just a difference in our philosophies.
I guess to me, I just felt like there wasn't enough variation there. But I think this is going to come down to the people you play with and your own thought style. Like, I don't think this is actually. There are some times when it's the game's fault, and I just think it's not too much. Like, there's only so much you can do with that box, and I do like a lot of different directions. Definitely a way better way to play than just Rochambeau. I don't know why that keeps coming to mind. I do want to point out though, and this is one thing I really love about this. This is based in the universe. We said, I think you said in the beginning, but I want to bring it back of the RPG book they have, and they have rules to how to use that with the RPG. And to me, those sound really cool because it makes sense for like, here's a quick way for you to actually challenge each other. And for if you're, let's say, you play a character maybe not optimally for the game, but like, he always plays exposed because he needs to know everything. That card lets you see cards in opponent's hand. That you'll be rewarded things in that RPG for that, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's a really interesting and nice little addition, and the fact that the game is so small and cheap means that if you are just a fan of that RPG, you could almost treat this just as a little mini addition slash expansion to that. And there's something really fun in RPGs when you can actually have a physical card that you're playing, and it kind of puts you in a different mindset, and you can feel like, oh, I'm going into a different headspace now for this part of the game. It's neat that they decided to offer that, and yeah, I think that could be fun for people, or just agnostic of that rule set, just using the game itself. I think it's a pretty fun, quick little filler game, especially for 2 players. I feel like that's maybe a slightly harder thing to find. A lot of the games of this vein I can think of are better for like 4 or more players. So it's nice to have something that's all about like the, deduction and reading each other, strictly meant for 2. And it's so small. If you like the kind of the wizard theme, I think it's worth looking at.
If you're a big fan of the Harry Potter or any of the kind of magic schools and you like that more head to head, challenging each other kind of gameplay, this is a perfect game for your shelf. It's small. It will, as Jonathan said, be that perfect, maybe in between game, though maybe in between some cooperative games that keep the heat going. And I don't think it will hurt in any way if you do like the gameplay style of trying to outwit and maneuver your opponents. And of course, if you have the RPG, it seems like the perfect pickup. It's nothing that's too big, so it's going to take up too much space. And it seems like it would be great to sort of split up the role playing elements in the RPG.
Yeah, a lot of fun uses there. It's a cool idea, and I'd love to see more stuff in the future, more things like this that are built to incorporate into role playing games. I think that's pretty neat. Hey, maybe you out there have had the chance to check out Duel of Wands, or maybe you have played Kids on Brooms and you want to let us know what you think about either of those games, those systems, and how they work together. Guess what? You have the chance to do so in our comments section down below. We want to hear your thoughts on everything we talked about in this video.
We'd love to hear from you, so we hope you take that acceptance letter. And we don't have a train that leads to us, so we just have a simple subway car, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, it's the best we could do. Until you get that call, until that owl arrives in the mail. This is not a Harry Potter game. Just to be clear, it's not actually Harry Potter. My name is Jonathan,
I'm Will.
and this has been Roll for Crit.
Congratulations, you have reached the end of the video. But before you leave, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. If you want to help us out more, you can check us out on Patreon. And if you want to see us play about in playing board games or some video games, you can check out our Twitch or our other YouTube channel, Roll for Crit Live, for more longer form videos that tend to be streamed live. So come join us.